Okay, so here we go, practice test 3. Everybody ready? Number 3, here we go. All right, so the first problem is more properties. All right, what is the property in A? Distributed, yeah. There is no property called multiplication, so let's not say that. Distributed. This is definitely a distributed property. All right, what about B? Now pay close attention to what's going on in B.
Yeah.
What?
Isn't it commutative?
It's commutative, Clara. Why is it commutative?
Because it's like, it has the same, like, numbers and letters, but it's not in the same order.
Exactly. So if you look at what's in the parentheses, what's in the parentheses on both sides? X plus y, right? Isn't X plus y what's in the parentheses? So did we regroup? No, associative is when you regroup. This is a trick question. I left the same things in the parentheses, I just changed the order. And when order changes, it's commutative. Jamison? What? Commutative is when the order changes. So if the order of the numbers changes, so when I read the right or the left side, it's 5xy. When I read the right side, it's xy 5. The order changed. That's commutative. If you leave the order the same, but you change the parentheses, then it's associative. All right, what's C? That's the additive identity.
Wait, will we have this, like, if we just say identity, will we, like, mark that?
I know. You have to indicate what the operation is, because there are two identities, so you have to indicate which one it is. All right, so study your properties if you're still having trouble, because there's 3 questions on the test right there. Easy points should be. All right, number 2 says solve this equation. All right, so what's your thought on that? Solve the equation. What? Quadratic formula, absolutely. That is not your only option, but kids, when you have a squared equation, the quadratic formula will always work, right? So use it. I mean, it's so easy to use. So x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of, oh, these are big numbers, but you'll have a calculator. What calculator are we bringing for the test? Just the graphing calculator, that's all. So b squared minus 4ac all over 2a.
If we want to put it in the calculator right away, would we just show our work like this?
I'll show you a word like this right here.
If we put it in the calculator?
You're going to put it in the calculator, but you need to write it down first. Because
No, I mean like from the graph. Like, or like you like put it in with the lines, and then you do like that graph.
oh, if you're graphing solve this, then you'll have to show me the picture you did and why you did that. Okay, so I'm not sure. I mean, I got to see some kind of work. So if you're going to do it with a graph, you're going to have to reproduce your graph here.
Wait, we would have put the 27 in there, right? We just do what's under the.
I would. You can do it all at once.
We can?
Yes, but again, just do what works for you. So if it works for you to do this part first, so 27 plus or minus the square root of 27 squared, that's actually going to become a plus 4 times 4 times 7. So that's 841 over 8. Now I have to recognize that is 2 separate answers, right? And I got to break down my 841. So what does 841 divide by? Anything?
Wait, when I did that, I got 29.
Apparently, I'll use square root of 3.
Ah, it breaks down to 29. That's awesome.
Wait, what did you do then?
Well, I was gonna break this down, you know, by making the tree diagram.
Yeah.
So I was trying to figure out what went into 841. But you guys just hit square root and it's a perfect square, so that's perfect. I would have eventually found that, but it would have taken me a while. So 27 plus 29 is, what is that, 56 divided by 8 is 7. So one of my answers is 7. 27 minus 29 is negative 2 divided by 8 is negative 1/4. So our answers actually work out nicely this time. We don't have any kind of weird stuff going on. That problem would have factored. So if you noticed that and factored it, that would work too.
So would I just draw the graph like this?
Yeah. That's what it looks like, yeah. Okay, all right, so now we've got an absolute value. What do we do here? It's different now. First of all, it's an inequality, so we know we're going to need a number line, right?
2.
So right in the middle, we'll put a 2. Don't put a dot there. That isn't part of your answer, right? So then we'll count forward 3. So that would be a 5, and that is a dot. And then we'll count backward 3, and that'll be negative 1, and that 2 is a dot. And they're filled in dots because of the or equal to. And I'm going to shade in between because it's a less than. So that would be negative 1 to 3. Right? Perfect. Randy, have you already done these? Okay, it would be great. Why don't you get out a piece of paper and do it along with us? Okay, it's just sitting there, or if you want to do it in Schoology, you can get out your iPad and do it in Notability. What? Oh, it should be a 5. It's that number right there.
And close on with brackets, right?
Yep. Yep. Okay, all right, so now we've got an equation that we need to solve, and it's got a bunch of fractions in it. So what am I going to do with all of these fractions? I'm going to clear them out by multiplying by, what did you say, 24? That would be a good choice on this one, because a 24 will cancel out an 8 and a 3. And that's what I need to do. I need to cancel those out. So, let's see what I can come up with. So if I times by 8, or by 24, I mean, everything, don't forget this side over here, you're multiplying everything by 24. The 8 cancels into it, right, and leaves a 3? So that makes 9x plus 3. Don't forget, you're distributing. Alright, then the 3 goes into the 24, leaves an 8. Again, you're distributing, so minus 16, oh, be careful, minus 8. Minus 8 times 2x and minus 8 times 1. And over here, nothing cancels, right? Because in order to cancel, it has to be bottom and top. And we don't have a bottom, so that's just going to be 48. Nothing cancels out.
Is it a minus because that negative sign?
That distributes all the way through. All right, now what? Collect like terms, yeah. So let's see, we have a -7 minus 5 equal to 48. So I'll add 5, so -7x equals, what is that, add 5, 53. And I got -53/7 as my answer. Does that look okay? All right, page 1 down, here we go, what's on page 2? Another solve. All my markers are running out. What do we want to do with this thing? Factor, 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 you are right. Yep. Why was the 8 negative? Because this is -8 times 1. You have to distribute the negative all the way through the parentheses. Pull your mask up, please. So we have x squared minus 3x minus 10 greater than 0. You can factor it. I absolutely would factor it. It's an easy factoring problem. It's not hard. That first one we looked at factored, but that would be a harder factoring. This one's so easy. What are the factors here going to be? -5 and +2? Now, if you just can't see that, you can always use the quadratic formula, right? The quadratic formula will work. But the reason you're doing all this is to get dots on the number line. That's why we're doing it. So where are the dots going to go? -2 and 5. Yep, in that order, of course, because this is a number line. And then, because it's a greater than, it will be shaded out. And when you shade out, you're getting your infinities involved in the problem, because that's what's out there. So this answer would be -∞ to -2. And these dots are open, so I'm using parentheses. And this answer is 5 to +∞. And I put a union symbol in between them, and that's my answer. Right? All right, what about the next one? We need to square both sides. Yeah, it's pretty easy. Pretty fast. So the square root of x plus 5 equals 6. So when I square both sides, x plus 5 equals 36, and x equals 31. Is that okay? Easy. Oh, C is not quite as easy. It's not bad, but it's a little more involved. What do we have to do with C? Look at how big it is. We have to group it. So it has way too many terms here. So we'll break it apart into 2 pieces, and we'll look at just that piece right there. So what can we take out of that? X squared. So out will come an x squared, and then what I'll have left just right here will be what? X minus 2. Then I'm going to look at the next 2 terms. And remember, if that one right there is a negative, take the negative out. So we're taking out negative what? -9. And if you take out a -9, you will be left with x minus 2. You took a negative out. What has to happen when you do this? The parentheses have to match. So if they don't match, you've messed up and you need to go back and look at it. These do match, so I'm gonna write down the match. And I'm gonna ignore those now, take those out, I wrote them down. What's left? X squared minus 9. And what do I know about x squared minus 9? It can be factored into x plus 3x minus 3. We call that the difference of squares. So now I know what my answers are. No number line. See, that's an equals, right? We only use number lines when we have less thans or greater thans. So I don't need a number line. I just say x equals what? 2, negative 3, and 3. Okay with everybody? All right, next. Oh, now we're going to simplify. Okay, so what do we do here? Just like we did in an earlier problem. You know, the negative is not parentheses, it's going to change all the signs. So 4 plus 6i minus 4 minus 7i. The 4's are going to cancel. And so all we have is negative 1i or negative I. That's all that's left. Alright, this one's going to take a little bit more effort. What do we do here? Well, yeah, we're going to do some foiling, but we have to have stuff to foil first. So we're going to multiply the top and the bottom of the fraction by 2 minus 3i. You always multiply by the conjugate. And the conjugate, you change the middle sign. That will make the i's in the denominator cancel out when you foil. So now, first outside, inside, last. Here we go. All right, we need to get our masks up, everybody, and we need to have our lanyards on. They're starting to get a little lax. Let's get our lanyards on. Everybody. I know. You're a pain in the butt, but you've been wearing them for years. You know what to do. Gabe, you okay today? Alright, so first, outside, inside, last. Just be careful with your arithmetic. And if I did that right. Now, what's the next thing I have to take care of or have to remember? I squared is negative 1. So this becomes a minus 6, and this becomes a plus 9. So let's see, 16 minus 6 is 10, minus 28i, that's my numerator. These cancel on the bottom, that's why we do the conjugate, so that will happen. I have 13 down there. Nothing cancels. Remember, you can only cancel in these problems if you can cancel out of all 3 spots. So if you can't cancel out of all 3 spots, don't cancel at all. All right, that's page 2 done already, okay. we've got an exponent problem. What do you want to do with this? Okay, so anything with a negative needs to go to the different place, right? So if it's on the top, it goes to the bottom and vice versa. So I can start that way. So I have my 8 and my 28. X to the 5th is going to come down. Y to the 8th is going to come down. X to the 10th is going to go up. And Y to the 3rd stays down. Right? Y to the 3rd doesn't move.
You're not gonna be able to put those together, right?
You are going to put them together, but you're going to put them together not by canceling them, but just by combining them. So that's going to give me Y to the 11th. Now, the x's are different. The x's will cancel because they're on top of each other. So what am I going to end up with? X to the 5th on the top. And then what about the 8 and the 28? They reduce like a regular fraction. You can take a 4 out of both of them. So that will be a 2 and that will be a 7. And there it is. They are not exponents. They are regular numbers and they reduce like regular fractions. Okay. Write the equation of a circle. What does that look like? What does a circle look like? Well, this is going to be x plus 4 squared
Plus Y.
plus y plus 3 squared equals 6. Because this number is always r squared. And what happens when you square root 6? You just get 6. Right? So, Caroline, you've already done this too? Okay, I'm going to ask you to do the same thing as her. Either get out a piece of paper or download it in Notability and work along with us, okay? Because sitting there staring is not open. Do it as many times as you can. That will help. Alright, what's next? Alright, the equation of the line. Okay, so what do we do to start when we have to write the equation of the line? Slope. So slope will be 4 minus negative 2 over 6 minus 3. And that is 6 over 3, which is 2. Right? And then what? Pick a point. I'll pick that one because it doesn't have any negatives in it, but it doesn't matter, right? You can pick whatever point you want. And then y minus 4 equals 2x minus 6. Now, for this problem, with directions like I have here, can I stop? Yeah. But if I would have added a little thing there that said, write in slope-intercept form, then we will simply take what we wrote here, we'll distribute the 2, and add the 4 over. So either one of those, and actually, y plus 2 equals 2x minus 3 would also be a possible answer. That's the point slope if I use that point. So all of these would be acceptable, depending on the directions. Okay? All right, now we've got a perpendicular. We want to write a line, so we're going to do the same thing we just did, except we want to be perpendicular to this. All right, so what do we think? We have to find a slope. So over here, you had 2 points, and the first thing you did was find the slope. You do not have 2 points. So your slope is going to have to come from somewhere else. What does perpendicular mean in terms of slopes? Opposite reciprocal. So I'm going to find the slope of this one, and then take the opposite reciprocal, right? So how do I find the slope of this one? Get y by itself. So I'm going to subtract 3x. So negative 9y equals negative 3x plus 4. Subtracting 3x. Now I'll divide by negative 9. And that reduces to 1/3. Now the only part of that equation you care about is right here, right? I don't care about the rest of this. Doesn't matter to me. That's all I care about. The slope of this line is 1/3. If this were a parallel problem, I would use 1/3. But it's a perpendicular problem, so the slope I'm going to use is negative 3 over 1 or negative 3. Turn it over, make it negative. Okay, and then here we go. Here's my point. So y minus 2 equals negative 3, x minus 1. If there's no other directions, that's fine. Or if we need slope-intercept, I will carefully distribute and get y by itself, and that would be the slope-intercept. And that would be the point 6. So if it says point slope, or if it doesn't say anything, it's fine to stop right here. But if it says slope-intercept, everybody can get here easily. All right, one more page, and this test is over. Gosh darn, it goes fast. All right, our projectile motion problem is next. So we have our general formula. Right, so there's our general formula. So now we're going to read question 8, and we're going to plug in this number and this number, and that will be the answer to A. Okay? So, what goes in for V sub naught?
100.
100, because it says the velocity is 100. What goes in for S sub naught?
0.
0, because the ball is at ground level. And when you're on the ground, your height is 0. So our equation, and I put S of T there.
So yeah, that was my question. So automatically when we switch that, do we still need to keep that S of T? No, you can make it Y?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, I wrote the S of T, so we probably should use that since that's right there in the answer blank.
Okay.
So it would look like that. But that is exactly the same, kids, as y equals, right? We're not going to let the notation confuse us. First, or Next question, B. How high is the ball after 1 second?
Yeah, you plug in one.
So you plug in 1 for t, because t is seconds. And I know I keep saying this, but oh my gosh, over and over again, kids will square 16. No. What gets squared here? 1. 1 squared is 1. Times negative 16 is negative 16. How high is the ball? 84 feet. Make sure you put a unit on it. How high is it? It's going to be feet. Time will be seconds. In this formula, it's always feet, always seconds. Okay. Question C. When does the ball hit the ground? Now remember, it started on the ground, but you threw it up into the air, so obviously it's going to come back down, right, and hit the ground. When does that happen?
You said, y equals 0.
Exactly. We put a 0 in for y. So our equation, come back to this equation. So 0 equals negative 16t squared plus 100t. What?
Can I do it in my calculator?
Yes, we have a calculator, so you can graph that if you want. And if you graph it, what would you be looking for? Here's a picture of the ball. It goes up in the air and comes back down. You'd be looking for that point right there, right? If you are graphing it, no, there's no zero. It's y equals. If you're graphing it, it has to be y equals.
No, after the 100.
Doesn't matter. How else could you do this if you didn't want to graph it? Graphing is fine. If you choose to graph it though, I need to see what you're doing. I can't just see an answer. You have to show me, okay, I graphed it. You don't have to write any words, but you're going to draw this picture, right? So I can see that's what you did. What else could you do if you don't want to draw a picture?
I was gonna say you could try to plot a 16, but I don't think a 16 comes out.
It doesn't. You could take out a 4 if you wanted to make your numbers smaller, but again, that's
Quadratic.
optional, and you can use the quadratic formula. Now, if you just leave it the way it is, without pulling anything out, your A would be negative 16, your B would be 100, and what would your C be? 0. Yep. So you could do the quadratic formula as long as you had those numbers. Ella, if you wanted to divide, you could do that, and then your A and B would be different, but your C is still going to be 0. Okay? So one way or the other, let's give this a try. I think I'll just go ahead and do the quadratic formula. Because it's going to work out really nice. Because of that 0 in there. So I'm just using the regular numbers. I didn't divide out anything. But this all just comes out to be 0. So I have negative 100 plus or minus the square root of 100 squared. What's the square root of 100 squared? That's just 100, right? So that's going to be negative 100 plus or minus 100 over negative 32. So negative 100 plus 100 is 0. That's this point. I don't care about that one. And then negative 100 minus 100 is 200 over 32, which if you did that on your calculator, you would have gotten 6.25 seconds. while we are here, well, first of all, let's stop there. So the answer to the problem is, when does it hit the ground? After 6.25 seconds. Now, would everybody with a calculator today type in the fraction 200 divided by 32? Just type that in your calculator for me. I want to show you something. Now, do you know this fraction reduces? We could reduce that fraction, right? It reduces. I'm going to show you how to reduce on your calculator. So if you wanted to leave that as a fraction, but reduce it, so I don't want a decimal, I want a fraction, type in 200 divided by 32, it equals, and then you have on your calculator a button that says math. It's in the first column, third that says math. Hit math. As soon as you hit that, the very first thing that comes up is frac. Hit enter, enter, and it will reduce that fraction. So 6.25 is fine. I'm just saying in the future, if you want to reduce a fraction quickly, your calculator will do that for you. So you type in the fraction, whatever it is, hit equals, and then just do math frac, and it will reduce it for you. Okay? That's just a little added piece of information. What? I just lost my zooming. Just hang on a minute. I gotta go back and get back into Zoom. Yeah, I don't know what happened. All of a sudden my Zoom just went away. Sorry about that. Okay, so we got a couple more problems to go. We gotta hurry up here. Get a couple more problems done. So the answer to C was 6.25 seconds. Make sure you put a unit on it. When does it hit the ground? 6.25 seconds. I did it with the quadratic formula. Some of you did it by graphing. It is fine either way. Just make sure you show some work. Okay? The purpose of showing work is twofold. One is, I can better understand what in the heck you're thinking. And second, if you get the wrong answer and there is no work shown, I can't give you any credit. But if you show some work, and I can figure out where you made your mistake, then you might get some points even though you had the wrong answer. Okay? All right, last one. We've got 2 points. And we want to find this. What does that mean? Distance. So that's the radical. How does that work? So it doesn't matter which way you go. So -2 minus -4. You are going to have to be careful with all these negatives in this problem. So -2 minus -4 plus 4 minus 1 squared. So it looks like that's going to be 4 plus 9. Did you get root 13?
Yep.
And that one does not reduce. But if you get one, and you know what I mean by reduce, if you can break down your radical, you need to break it down. No decimal answer acceptable there, okay? The only problem that has a decimal answer acceptable is the projectile motion problem. Everything else has to be exact. You hear what I'm saying? Everything else has to be exact. That means no rounding off decimals. Okay. All right, midpoint. Now we have the same 2 points, and we want to find the midpoint. Average. Yep, midpoint is average. So we're going to take our 2x values from our points, and we're going to add them. What's -4 and -2? -6 divided by 2 is -3. 1 and 4 divided by 2, 5 halves, or 2.5.
We put either.
Yeah, because you're not rounding that off. It's exact. If you type square root of 13 in your calculator, you have to round that off. That's what I don't want. Okay? All right, we have now taken the test 3 times. Right? So you know exactly what you know and what you don't know. So we got a couple more minutes, so we can do whatever. I would recommend, and remember, it's sort of my job to help coach you to get the best grades that you can. I would recommend that you, sometime before next Wednesday, when we take the test, that you go in, print another one. You don't have to do all 3 of them, but print one off and sit down and see how much of it you can do all by yourself. Because if you sit down at your dining room table and it takes you 2 hours to get through it, you're in trouble because you don't have 2 hours. Or if you leave half of it blank because you can't remember how to do it, you're in trouble. So make yourself sit down and do it without a tutor, without the answers, without the videos. Make yourself sit down and do it just like it's a test. Whatever you struggle with, that's what you have to go back and study. You have to practice, practice, practice. So that when you sit down next week, you just boom, 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 boom. Ella?
Will the test be as long as like one of these practice tests?
It is exactly like one of those practice tests. But notice, even with Father Jeff and all my talking and, whatever, messing around, all that, look, we got in with, it took us about half an hour basically to get through that. Right? So, timing should not be an issue if you know what you're doing. You're going to struggle if you don't know what you're doing. Farrell? Farrell, we're reviewing. No, we're not done. We're never done. There's always more math to do. What question do you have, Farrell? What are you not going to be able to do next week? If you want to go to the bathroom, go ahead. Just sign out.
Are these classes long blocks? Or are they still end regular time?
No, they're regular time. Today? Yeah, they're regular time. Now, it's adjusted because they throw in other stuff, but the class period teaching is regular time. This is going to end at the regular time, and the next one will start at the regular time. But the next one, you'll have your regular A period, but then you have some activity that will take longer. But class itself is not different. All right, so, Trey? What are you doing?
Checking the sewer class segment.
Okay, what would be period A? Okay, this is a day 1. What are you gonna miss, Trey, next week
What do you mean?
on the test? What do you feel like we still need to review?
The midpoint's pretty hard for me.
The midpoint?
of the circle. That's probably the hardest.
The midpoint of the circle?
Yeah, what we were doing with like the A-B stuff.
Like what, this right here?
Yeah.
Okay. So what we just need to remember is that midpoint means average. So if we have a couple of points, and we want to find the midpoint, we just average them. So that means we're going to add our x's. You got to do the x's together and the y's together. So 3 and -2 makes 1 divided by 2, so that would be 1/2. And then 7 and 5 is 12, divided by 2 is 6. That's it, that's all there is to the midpoint. Now, the distance is more work. The distance, remember, we have to subtract our x's in either order, doesn't matter, so I did 3 minus -2. Then I'll do 7 minus 5. So that's going to give me 3 minus -2 is 5 squared, 25. plus 4. So that one doesn't reduce either. But remember, if they come out reducible, so for example, if you came out with the square root of 80, if you did all that and got 80, you have to break that 80 down. So that would be 2 times 40, 2 times 20, 2 times 10, 2 times 5. And then once you get it broken down to where you can't do it anymore, we look for pairs. So there's a pair, and there's a pair. So I can take out a 2 and a 2, and I multiply those, and I have left a 5, so that would be 4 root 5. That breaks down into 4 root 5. Ours doesn't break down.
Wait, so like when you're breaking down and they're like, I don't know, there's not symmetry in that, but say there's like 2 like numbers that didn't break down, then there are the 2s. So like you would still multiply, that would make it 15.
Everything's multiplying. When you're doing factors here, 2 times 40, 2 times 20, everything is multiplied. Everything is multiplied. All right? All right, so Miriam, what are you gonna miss on whenever we take this test? Nothing? Why, we heard it here, folks. Miriam's missing nothing. I hope that's the case. Katie, what about you?
I have a question on how, I just like, on the graph, I wasn't sure how you got that point. Like for the velocity.
If you graphed it, I did not graph it. I used the quadratic formula. But if you graphed it, you've got your equation in the calculator. You've drawn the picture. We decided that was the point that we wanted right there. So I would second calc, go down to 0, left bound, right bound, guess. So I'm going to set my left bound over here somewhere, my right bound over here somewhere. And here's my guess, and when I press enter, it better come up at the bottom. It will say 0. The calculator screen will say 0, 6 point whatever it was, x equals 6 point whatever. Okay, if you're doing intersect, then you have to have 2 equations put in, and one of them would be y equals 0. So you can do that if you want to. Okay, time to clean the desk, and you're going to head off to period A after the bell rings. So let's get all your stuff off so I can come around and spray. I will see you guys on Monday in our virtual deal.
Are we still reviewing on Monday?
Yeah, I don't know what else am I supposed to do on Monday?
Do we have class Tuesday?